If you find yourself struggling with some specific keys, whether it's the left hand C or the B flat or any of those more awkward fingerings on the clarinet, then this video is for you. My name is Josh Gu, and after years of studying the clarinet with some of the best teachers from around the world, I am excited to be sharing my knowledge with you. So go to QuickStartClarinet.com or check the description on this video to see all of the wonderful resources I have to help you reach your clarinet dreams. And of course, subscribe to this channel for weekly clarinet and music tips and tricks. The clarinet is obviously the best instrument, but there are some aspects of it that could potentially be better, partially because of the clarinet's cylindrical bore, which is very unique to the clarinet out of all of the woodwinds and actually pretty much all instruments. It forces things to be in certain positions that sometimes are a little cumbersome, and I would say that the clarinet is probably not the most ergonomic of all of the instruments, and there's some things, again, unique to the clarinet, like these fingerings, the throat tone keys. Most other instruments don't have a throat tone region and don't require so much finger dexterity from this first finger and like the first knuckle of that first finger. So things like that make the clarinet a unique challenge. And I find that there's all kinds of keys on there that can be a little tricky and a little difficult to coordinate the fingers on really well. For me personally, the most difficult key, the one that I have problems with, which I've talked about in some live weekly warm-ups before, is this darn pinky key, this D sharp, E flat, or G sharp, A flat. That one, that right pinky key, for whatever reason, my pinky just does not like to press that nicely, and I have all kinds of coordination issues, whether it's playing the chromatic scale, E major, B major, those kinds of keys that require this key to be used a lot. I have the hardest time with, and it's something that I'm really working on. Another common one that actually somebody had commented about and asked about was the left pinky C key, and that one is another really weird one. This one's actually interesting because it's a different kind of key mechanism from all of the other keys, because this one sort of rotates around, whereas most of the other ones you're pressing into something. So it has a different feel to it. And that's actually something that's a big problem on bass clarinet, especially, that key is just so spongy and squishy and goes out of adjustment compared to all the other keys. So it's really a pain. And if you have a left hand E flat key, then that's another weird one that's totally new and something that you may not have learned on. You most likely didn't have that key when you were learning. So a lot of times when people upgrade to a more professional or just a clarinet that has that key, it can be confusing and weird, and people bump it accidentally, and that's another thing. Most of the other keys are okay, but even like this side E flat key is kind of a pain to get to and coordinate with. Like these throat keys, like I talked about, are really tricky. So we know that there's all of these keys, and again, it depends on your hand shape and your finger length and how you hold the clarinet. All of that stuff can make a big difference in what keys are tricky for you. So comment down below with one fingering or a particular fingering pattern that's been really tricky for you, because just to share and we can all commiserate in the weird things that we have to deal with as clarinetists. And don't even get me started on the fact that the register key is a 12th rather than an octave, so when we play 2 octave scales, it's completely different fingerings in the second octave than the first octave. That's a fun thing too. But anyways, that's all of the issues. We know that there's the issues there, but I want to help you and try to give some solutions to make it a little bit better for you. So there's 2 things that are relatively related, but 2 big important things to focus on when working on getting comfortable with all the fingerings and trying to overcome particularly awkward fingerings. The first thing is hand position, hand shape, and those kinds of things. So for me personally, like I mentioned, this right pinky E flat D sharp key doesn't go well for me, and most of the time it has to do with my hand position and my finger position and finger shape. So oftentimes when I'm playing this key, I straighten out my pinky too much, so I have a nice curve when I'm playing these other fingerings, and then I go to this one and it gets too straight, or I press too far, or I try to get too close to the edge. Something goes awry with my finger shape. I don't know why, it's just something that my fingers do. It probably has to do with some sort of tension or concern or subconscious that I know that that fingering is going to be tricky, so I panic. It also feels different. Like this key, all three of these keys have sort of a similar feel when you push them down, but this one has a different feel to me, and I think that makes my pinky freak out. It also is my pinky's being really close to the ring finger, so there's less independence as when it's around here. So for whatever reason, my pinky's changing shape. So what I practice to try to get more comfortable with this fingering is I do all kinds of different scales, and I do it nice and slow and try to make this as natural and relaxed as possible. And that's the key to all finger issues, is to make everything as relaxed and natural as possible. So if I can keep this pinky in shape and not let it straighten out or press weird or do crazy things, if I can keep the position, keep it comfortable, keep it similar, then that is what helps and what will allow me to do this fingering comfortably and naturally. The other big aspect of that is general hand position too. Speaking of these right pinky keys, which are tricky for a lot of people, I find a lot of people let the clarinet sort of fall down as you're trying to play, and often end up with this kind of hand position where your wrist ends up kind of high and these fingers are really stretching, and that's when this pinky really has to straighten out. And also these fingers get kind of curved up, and you can see like that is not a natural hand position anyway. What we want is that good, relaxed hand position. And you find when you bring that to the clarinet, you might have a little bit lower wrist, and it's more of a holding the clarinet up, which is great because we want to keep the instrument up and in our mouth. And it allows you to have a more natural hand shape as you wiggle on the keys. And then as long as you can do that and keep this pinky not going straight and in that natural relaxed position, then you'll be in good shape. So that's the first most important thing for overcoming any fingering challenge, whether it's a particular interval between two notes or the transition between the two notes that's tricky, or just one particular key that always causes you problems. It all comes down to relaxed natural hand shape. That's the first most important thing. The second thing, kind of related, that's also very important, is just general stability of the instrument. Last week I was playing a concert where I was playing this piece that I wrote, and there's this passage, which you probably can't see, but it's E, D sharp, C, A, C, D sharp, E, so it goes back up. And it's in the clarion register, starting on that E. So E, D sharp, left pinky C, down to A, back up to C, D sharp, E, D, 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 D. And I was having the hardest time with this pattern, and what I discovered is if I left more fingers down on the A, so a little bit more covered resonance fingering on the A, it actually made it a lot easier. And the reason why it was making easier is because it was keeping the instrument more stable. And that's the big number two important thing to think about whenever you're struggling with any fingering, is you want to keep the instrument as stable as possible. So what I did, going E, D sharp, C, then I kept this pinky down when I went to the A, and I kept pretty much all of my fingers down when I went to the A, and that allowed me to hold the instrument really steady and made it easier to get back to it. Because what was happening before, when I took more fingers off, I do E, D sharp, C, and then on the A, the instrument would change positions a little bit, wobble a little bit, and that would cause my right hand to sort of get out of position, and then it had to find itself again. And that little extra moment of having to find where the clarinet had moved to caused issues in actually playing this pattern. So when I was able to hold the instrument more steady, my fingers knew where they needed to go, and honestly most of them were already still there, so that made it a lot easier to make that transition because I knew where I needed to be, I was already there and in position, rather than having to find a new target. Another way to think about that is that every single time your finger goes down, it has to land on the holes or the note's not going to come out. So if you're moving your finger very little and the hole's staying stationary, that's super easy. Probably 100% of the time, 99.99% of the time, you're going to have no problem hitting that hole and covering that, because you're not moving very far, the target's not moving. If the target starts moving even just a little bit, and then you're coming from further away, that's when you're gonna have issues where your finger is not gonna know where that hole is, and you're going to end up not covering things. So that's my other big advice for when you're struggling with a specific fingering or a specific interval or transition between certain notes, is to keep that instrument steady so that your fingers know where they need to land. And then the first tip, just to recap, is keep your hand position relaxed and steady. And that also goes into keeping the fingers nice and close to the keys so that you can just land right where you need to be every time with as little effort as possible and as much precision as possible. All right, that's all I got. So leave a comment below with a tricky fingering for you, and I want to see if better hand position, more relaxed, more natural hand position helps, and if you can think about holding the instrument more steady so that you're not trying to hit a moving target. Hopefully that will help as well. And thank you for watching this video, liking and subscribing to the channel. It really means a lot to me, and I love making this content for you, and I hope that you're soaking it up and enjoying it, and I look forward to seeing you in another video.